as we're doing this year-long project here at SEC where we're reading through the entire Bible over 2017, I just think it's so cool and totally appropriate that we landed in the middle of Proverbs on Father's Day. Because what dad could not use? A little more wisdom, which is what Proverbs is all about. If you don't know much about the book, here's a quick overview. It's 31 chapters long, and it's actually a collection of collections of Proverbs and wisdom from some pretty smart guys. The first one is, the first 29 chapters are Proverbs of this guy named King Solomon, who we read about a few books ago in 1 Kings, you might remember. He was the famous King David's son, and God basically came to Solomon and granted him kind of one wish in a sense. And he goes, what do you want as the new king? And Solomon goes, I want wisdom. I want a discerning heart to be a good leader. And God goes, you got it. I am so happy with that request. And thankfully, Solomon didn't just keep all that godly wisdom to himself. He wrote it down for us to read to this day. Then chapter 30 is, Proverbs says, the sayings of Agur, son of Jakeh. We actually know nothing whatsoever about him historically, other than that he wrote a chapter of Proverbs. And then chapter 31, the famous one about the ideal wife, if you've never read that, is the sayings of King Lemuel. And we don't know much about him historically either, so that's kind of interesting, those last two guys. But the important thing is what all of them have in common is they gave us some just ridiculously amazing wisdom for life. The kind of exact wisdom that a lot of us are looking for being a parent, for marriage, for managing finances, for choosing a career even, for everything. It's actually all in the book of Proverbs if we'll just take the time to kind of plumb the depths of it and excavate it out and apply it to our lives. And what person in general couldn't use a little more wisdom from God for life, right? So we're going to take a look at that today, kind of as a whole thing. It's hard to teach on a chapter of Proverbs in the middle of the book because they're just one proverb after another and they don't necessarily have themes. So I could do 80 different sermons on just these 3 chapters. But what I want to do is give you kind of an overview. Because as I've read Proverbs before, it's occurred to me there's really only about 6 categories of Proverbs that are in the book. 6 categories that they talk about. And conveniently enough this week, with much help from God and wisdom from God, I was able to fit them all into an acrostic with the word wisdom. One word is kind of a stretch, but the others all fit really well. So jot these in there somewhere. First thing Proverbs tells you wisdom looks like. If you are a wise person, the first thing you do is you work diligently. In other words, you're a hard worker. You work well. One thing Proverbs is adamant about is that diligence and hard work lead to nothing but good stuff. And laziness leads to nothing but bad stuff, okay? In fact, Proverbs often paints a picture of laziness as something that's really just disgusting. And if you read the book, you see it in detestable and just stupid, as you would even say at times about certain things. For example, look at verse 11 of chapter 12 here. Here's one example. Chapter 12, verse 11, Solomon says, those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense. Right? You just sit around and talk all the time, you never actually do anything. It's pointless, right? Get to work, and then you'll have what you need. Or skip down to verse 24. There's another example. He says, diligent hands will rule, but laziness ends in forced labor. There it is, right? Be diligent. Wise people who will be blessed people, Solomon says, are people who make the choice again and again to work hard, to be diligent, to get your hands dirty, right, in all the right ways. People who take responsibility for themselves and their families and do a good job, he would say. He talks about that value of all that from a number of different angles throughout the book of Proverbs. I can't cover them all right now in the time we have, but read the book, man, and make a note of all the ways that he makes the point. Man, wisdom, living wisely looks like working diligently. It's a huge, huge thing. Number 2, living wisely also looks like living with integrity. Oh, Proverbs has a lot to say about that. What's integrity? In other words, you do the right thing by God's standard, whether anyone's watching you or not. Because God's always watching, right? Even when your boss isn't around, you still do your job, Even when the policeman's not at the corner, you still obey the law. You do the right thing. You're someone people can trust. You're honest to the core because you're living for God. And he's always watching, right? Look at verse 22 here. Here's an example of something Proverbs says there. Solomon says, the Lord detests lying lips. Not like, he's kind of like, if you wouldn't lie, it'd be okay. No, he's like, he detests lying lips, but he delights in people who are trustworthy. Or actually flip over a page to Proverbs 13 for a second. Look at verse 6 there. Proverbs 13, verse 6. He says, righteousness actually guards the person of integrity, but wickedness overthrows the sinner. One of my favorite things in life, at the aquarium especially, since I'm in security and we deal with a lot of sensitive information, whatever sensitive info there is at the aquarium, we kind of oversee it, right? And so every so often someone's integrity will get questioned or something will be left undone, and they'll look at security like, what happened? And I'm so grateful. My bosses always go, well, we know it wasn't Matt. We know it wasn't. I'm so glad I have that reputation, right? Because it's huge. I actually came across a great blog about integrity a few weeks ago. It's called How Much Would You Pay for Integrity by a woman named Amy K. Hall. I just want to read this. It's not real long. Listen to this. She says, life presents us with all sorts of ways to cut corners. You see a mistake in your favor on a bank statement. You get home from the store, you discover an item wasn't paid for. A friend asks if you want in on some very profitable deal that isn't exactly honest. Your customer offers to pay you cash, and you see an easy way to avoid paying for the goods or services you want, and so on and so on. Sometimes the temptation is to avoid the hassle of correcting an error that's in your favor. Sometimes the amount of money you'll gain if you do or just don't do this or that small thing seems like a game that's worth bending the rules a bit. But whenever I'm tempted by something like that, I ask myself the question, if you lost your integrity, how much would you pay to get it back? If people stopped trusting you because they felt like they couldn't. My answer is always that if I lost my good name, I would pay any amount to get it back. And if I would pay an exorbitant amount, I would certainly pay a measly $5 or make a trip back to the store to pay the amount of that unpaid for item. To regain my integrity, I'd pay at least the amount I would wrongly gain were I to give in to that temptation. And if I were to pay that money to get my integrity back, why not just pay the same amount of money now to keep my integrity in the first place? Guard your integrity. Never give it up for the sake of convenience or any amount of material gain. Proverbs, she quotes, has wise words for us. And then she quotes chapter 22, actually, where Solomon says, a good name is to be desired more than great wealth. Favor is better than silver or gold. That's Proverbs 22:1. And even if no one would ever know about your sin, why trouble your conscience? In chapter 3, Proverbs talks about the peace of a clear conscience. It says, keep sound wisdom and discretion, so they will be life to your soul and adornment to your neck. Then you'll walk in your way securely, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. When you lie down, your sleep will be sweet. And even beyond the motivation of the peacefulness of a clear conscience, there's beauty. Wisdom, the ability to apply knowledge of what's right to your life, is beautiful. Who can resist this description? She says, also from Proverbs 3. It says, how blessed is the person who finds wisdom and the person who gains understanding. Their profit is better than the profit of silver, and their gain better than fine gold. Their wisdom is more precious than jewels, and nothing you desire compares with it. Long life is in its right hand. In its left hand are riches and honor. Wisdom's ways are pleasant ways, and all wisdom's paths are peace. Wisdom is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who hold it fast, from Proverbs 3. She says, who can read Proverbs 3 without longing for the beauty that's described there? And she concludes, we have so much more to gain by following God and acting in ways that proclaim the excellencies of his character to the world than we do by grasping any ill-gotten material gain, large or small. Nothing is worth giving up your integrity. Isn't that good? Love that. I'll post that later on our Facebook page if you want to read it again or print it. But the point is, Proverbs would urge you, beginning to end, be a person of integrity. Be someone that other people know they can trust, because you always do the little things. Someone pays you too much. You bring it to your boss's attention. And it's that awkward, like, oh, well, that's really honest. But then what does that say to them? They know they can trust you. So when there's some money missing later, they know, well, obviously it wasn't Matt, because he brought his check to me when it was 50 cents over. He's not going to take $200. How are you building your integrity? Be someone who's honest to the core. Someone your boss can trust. Someone the police officer down the street can trust. Someone your spouse can trust. Oh my goodness. The Bible has so much to say in Proverbs about avoiding sexual immorality and adultery. Even, thinking the thoughts. Save your heart, your mind, your eyes, your thoughts, your body only for your spouse. Proverbs actually gets very graphic about that at times if you read the book, because it's making a point. You stay faithful. Be someone of integrity to your spouse too, that they know they can trust. Be a person of moral, sexual, and every other kind of integrity in God's sight. And teach your kids to do the same, Proverbs would say. The famous verse that a lot of people use for spanking, oddly enough, is in this chapter. At the end, and you can read it later, but the idea in Proverbs is just, discipline your kids so they become people of integrity too. It actually says if you don't discipline them, if you let them run wild, you're actually acting like you hate them. Our culture gets that backwards, right? Our culture thinks, oh, I don't want to infringe on them or make them cry if I really love them. That's backwards, the Bible says. No, if you love them, you train them in the right way to go so they don't get off track and kill themselves by doing something stupid. You know, when they get off track, you bump them a little bit to get them back on track. Now, never abusively, always appropriately, certainly. And in spanking or timeouts, whatever you do, the point is, don't just let kids do whatever they want. That's a terrible idea, the Bible says. Hold them tight when they're young, and as they get older, you slowly release the grasp. A lot of people do backwards that I've heard other people teach. Obviously, I have no credibility in this, but other people like Francis Chan talks about how, he'll watch parents, they let kids go crazy as they're little kids, then they're surprised they're rebellious teenagers and they try to grab on too late. He goes, no, you got to hold them tight when they're young and slowly release them as they become people of integrity onward and later. The Bible says, man, integrity. Guard your integrity. Teach it to your kids. Be a person of integrity. Number 3, Proverbs says, living wisely looks like good stewardship. Good stewardship. Proverbs actually has a lot to say about finances and how to manage them wisely, which I need to read some more of those personally. But did you know Proverbs actually would say, never co-sign for someone else? Because you don't want to be responsible when they tank, when they tank their situation there. Don't co-sign for people. Proverbs actually says that. It's dumb to co-sign for people. It also says it's dumb to try get-rich-quick schemes because they don't work. Proverbs actually says that. Don't try, pyramid schemes, all that stuff. It doesn't work. Don't waste your time on it. Oh my goodness, do you know how many times, what am I, like 18 years of ministry now? How many times I've heard it, oh, pastor, I'm trying this, fill in the blank, this thing out, and when it gets big, I'm going to be tithing like crazy, and yeah, okay. I appreciate the heart in that, assuming they're not just regurgitating something from a conference. But let's be real, church. You know how many times I've heard that versus how many times it's happened in 18 years of ministry? That many? Because pyramid schemes and get-rich-quick schemes don't work. Proverbs said that 3,000 years ago. Don't try to get rich quick. It doesn't work, and even if it does, it won't be blessed. That is what Proverbs says. You want to get money, it says you, A, work hard, right? First one. You work hard, you save a little, you budget well, you put some here for emergencies, you honor God by giving him a tenth. That's in Proverbs 2, right off the top. Give God a tenth. You live generously toward others, Proverbs says. You help the poor along the way, Proverbs says, and God will take care of it. Well, you might never get that Maserati. Yeah, but at least you'll have enough to eat because you didn't blow it all on some dumb Tupperware party or something, right? You'll be okay. Check out verse 11 of chapter 13, for example. Solomon says, hey, dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. He goes, just work hard and be a good budgeter, and it'll grow. Put some aside here, give to the poor, honor God. You'll be okay. Stop trying to get rich quick. It doesn't work. And remember, Solomon was very rich, right? Maybe someone to listen to. All right, next one. It says, don't miss D. D is devotion to God. Which might be, well, obviously, it's in the Bible. That's going to be one of them. But you need to understand, this is the book of Proverbs, okay? So it's saying devotion to God isn't just something that's good to do. It's saying, did you ever think about how smart it is to be devoted to God? Right? That's reinforced for me every time I work on one of our big questions blog things, and just the questions people throw. Well, how do you even know you have a soul? That's coming up this week. Well, how do you know there's a God? That's one of the first ones I tackled. Well, if God is good, why do bad things happen? Oh, that's a really cool answer, actually. And one thing that hits me over and over again is, man, this Christianity stuff actually makes sense. It doesn't just feel good. It's not just something good to do. It's actually the smartest way to live. There is no other worldview, and I studied a lot of them in college. There is no better worldview to help you navigate this life. There is no other worldview that helps you through difficulties like Christianity does, that gives you hope through tough times like Christianity does. There's no other worldview that helps you understand humanity's condition and what the problem is like Christianity does, that actually knows how to fix it. There's no other worldview that helps you thrive by knowing what to pursue and what to avoid in this life. Christianity isn't just good, it's smart. It is smart to be devoted to God, to fear him, to follow him. As Proverbs said at the very beginning of the book, the fear of the Lord really is the beginning of wisdom. You want to be smart? Proverbs, King Solomon, smartest guy in history aside from Jesus, right, says you start by fearing God. You start by surrendering and being devoted to him. That's where wisdom starts. So how devoted to God are you this morning? Are you pursuing him first and foremost above all else? Are you seeking to know him and love him with all of your heart, all of your soul, all of your mind, and all your actions? Is he everything to you? If so, the other stuff will work out. Because if he's everything to you, you'll treat people like he says to. And your relationships, your job, your family, your finances, it'll work because you're following him. And it's smart. It's a smart thing to do. All right. Oh, this is the one I had to stretch a little bit, but it still works. Optimal communication. Haha. Optimal communication is something else Proverbs says it looks like to live wisely. What's that mean? In other words, using the best communication logically for each situation you encounter. Right? In other words, knowing when to hold your tongue and when to speak up boldly. And there is a difference. And when you do speak up, you speak with grace, you speak with patience, you speak with encouragement for people as often as you can, for people that need it. You do speak boldly at times. You confront things when needed, but you confront appropriately. You don't just vent. Right? There's some great verses in 12, 13, and 14 about, like, an idiot. A fool just speaks what's on his mind rashly. It's a bad idea, right? Proverbs says you guard your tongue and use it wisely. Always do it without perverse language, Proverbs says. You even speak gently in the face of hostility because that actually diffuses the situation and you get somewhere instead of into a shouting match where nobody's listening to anyone and you're just wasting your time anyway. Because you respond gently to someone who's hostile, it'll bring the temperature down of the conversation and you can get somewhere constructive. Proverbs has a ton of things to say. Let's go back to chapter 12 for a second. Look at this. Proverbs 12, look at verse 16. Here's one of the verses I was talking about. He says, fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. Or verse 18 right there. The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Or verse 25. Anxiety weighs down a heart, but a kind word cheers it up. I'm freaking out. Sometimes all someone needs is a kind word to lift the anxiety. How about that? Man, there's so much in the book of Proverbs that we can learn about optimal communication. And how to have good relationships. You just got to get into it and pull those nuggets out, excavate the gold, and apply it. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'll tell you, Proverbs 15:1 coming up in tomorrow's reading. One of my favorite verses. I use it all the time in security. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up more anger. Someone's freaking out because they think someone stole their stroller or they lost their kid or whatever, and they're just freaking out. I'm like, okay, well, tell me what it looked like. And I'll go, oh my gosh, it's terrible. What am I going to do? Okay, that's not going to help anything, right? In security, we go, okay, how can I help? And people always tell me, how do you stay so calm all the time? Well, honestly, not always inside, but there is a supernatural thing that happens, and it works. Proverbs 15:1, it's where I got it. That's how I get things done. Everyone's freaking out, you stay calm. It brings it down to accomplish what needs to be done. So much in Proverbs. Wise people don't just say what's on their mind any way they want to. They seek optimal communication. Though really getting that one or any of the others we've looked at, it really all occurs to me that it comes down to the last one here, which is meekness, which is another word for humility. I kind of had to stretch that a little too. But meekness, right? Proverbs has a ton to say about the value and the importance of pursuing humility and a humble heart. And getting rid of pride and ego. Because humility leads to good things, pride and ego leads to destruction. And what are those? We've talked about it before, but I think my favorite definition comes from Dr. Charles Stanley. He's a pastor back in Georgia. He says, humility or meekness is just having an honest view of yourself. Not a higher view of yourself than you should have. I'm so much better than everybody. No. Just, honest. Not higher than you should, but also not lower than you should. Realizing, okay, I'm human. I'm not perfect. I have limits. I need a nap sometimes. I make mistakes. I sin at times. But I'm also worth the life of God's Son. He says, I'm worth this. Jesus' life is my value. Oh my goodness. 2 boundaries there. You are very loved, as is everyone around you. But we're all on the same level in God's sight as far as our humility goes. Pride, by contrast, is anytime you lift yourself up above others. I'm so much better than them. I live here, these stupid tourists. We do it a lot. Well, I know so much more than them. Well, what if you really do know more than someone else? People ask me, what if you really are good at something? Then you are humbly grateful. You thank God for that talent and use it as He directs you. You don't get prideful. Well, I am better than them. Yeah, but that's not humility. Humility is, okay, well, I'm good at this. Thank you, God, for that talent. Help me use it for you. Help me get better at my talent. Right? Humility, meekness. You're just not consumed with yourself all the time. Humility, right? Pursue humility, Proverbs says. Pride will just destroy you. When you need help, it's some different things Proverbs says about that. When you need help, ask for it. Admit you don't know everything. Today, oddly enough, Proverbs 13:1 is about listen to your dad. Good proverb for today, when he knows what he's talking about. The older you get, the more you realize your dad knows, right? Listen to people. Listen to wise people. Seek out advice. Rely on God anyway, not yourself. And don't be too proud to listen to constructive feedback. Proverbs talks about that a lot. Fools tune people out. Wise people listen to feedback and seek it out. How am I doing? Is there anything I can do better here? He says, don't envy proud, violent people either. Our culture, who do they lift up? Oh, look at this guy and this guy. Don't envy people who are proud. Envy the humble. Follow their example. Don't envy violent people. Choose humble role models who honor God. When you're wrong, admit it. Take responsibility for it and make amends. Don't be a mocker, it says. Just live humbly. There's so much, man. Read Proverbs over and over again. It says humility is so key, and pride will just destroy you. As Solomon writes one chapter before the ones we're reading here. Here's one example. He goes, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. How often have you seen that? Someone who's just full of themselves and is like, oh, they're going to get it, and they do. But the Bible said that would happen. When pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. And in chapter 15 that we'll read in tomorrow's reading, it says humility comes before honor. Chapter 22, humility is the fear of the Lord. Its wages are riches, honor, and life. Proverbs says, man, pursue humility, pursue meekness. It's huge. As well as the other things on the list there. Spend some time this week getting into the book of Proverbs. If you haven't been reading with us, just start today, 12 through 13. Tomorrow do 14 on, and next week we'll do the book of Ecclesiastes on Sunday. So you have till next Sunday to finish Proverbs. There is so much good in Proverbs. Basically, as Solomon says in verse 20 of chapter 13 here, he says, walk with the wise and you'll become wise. Who you hang out with will influence you. He goes, so hang out with smart people, wise people, right? Hang out with the book of, if you don't know any, hang out with the book of Proverbs, right? There's a lot of wisdom in there. Pursue wisdom by God's definition and watch what he does as a result.